Future Learn and Royal Holloway University presents Audio Description at Shakespeare's Globe.
I'm David Bellwood. I'm the Access Manager at Shakespeare's Globe. I'm a 5'5" white man in my late 30s with grey hair, a grey beard and grey-blue eyes, and I'm currently wearing a light blue shirt. At the Globe, we will audio describe every production that we put on. It's quite a relaxed environment that we have inside the house, so we run slightly differently to most theatres. To begin with is obviously the script. So Shakespearean script can be very dense, and the audio describers have to describe the action in between quite dense dialogue from time to time, whilst being respectful of the tone that the language sets up. Another thing which is different potentially about the Globe is that it's an open air theatre, so when patrons are wearing audio description headsets, we need to feed a little bit of the dialogue back through the headset, just because of climatic interference and any noises that might happen. So loud pigeons to helicopters can interfere with the AD as and when it happens. Our touch tours happen just before the show, so 2 hours before the show, and we guide the visually impaired patrons around the set and props. And we do this for several reasons, one of which is that there's a huge amount of immediate information that comes to a visually confident audience when they first enter the building, or it's the equivalent of when a curtain goes up in a proscenium arch theatre. And we want to deliver an equivalent to that immediate information to the audiences via the touch tour. So it's again not an act of charity, it is an act of access to make sure that they can build a mental map of the stage, and if they have different levels of sight, they can understand the costumes and what bright colours or dark colours might be worn by different characters. Touch tours are great to improve the understanding of a performance for VI patrons because they help create a mental map of the stage, a mental understanding of the world of the stage, and they get them to understand the process of design that has gone into creating the play. The presence of the audience on stage with the actors discussing the nature of the production means that the actors can understand what is of significance or what's of importance to the visually impaired theatre goer. And this is really, really important because there's a two-way dialogue, which is really, really important for the construction of a play. It's quite often the case in modern society that we associate playgoing with being a passive, stationary, silent act that happens in a dark space. And that's simply not true for either the Globe Theatre or the Sam Wanamaker Playhouse. There's an active participatory role that the audience member undergoes simply by being in the space. And the touch door helps the beginning of that process get underway for people who don't have access to that immediate visionary or visual context of the play. Audio description helps us diversify our audiences and by extension actually our workforce, because it opens the opportunity to experience Shakespeare's plays to a wider group of people. And there's quite a lot to unpack in thinking about what that wider group of people looks like. We are centred around the life and works of one white man, and that predominance is often a barrier to people feeling that they can engage with us. And likewise, theatre attendance is often considered to be a visual activity, and that too presents a barrier to people even thinking that they can attend a Shakespeare play and fully appreciate it. In the Globe and the Sam Wanamaker Playhouse, we have shared lighting, so everyone is fundamentally in the same lighting state, and we don't necessarily have emphasis on the visual as the primary stratum of sensory engagement. So back in Shakespeare's day, when these plays were being written, and you start to see the word audience appear more regularly, that comes from the term audio, as in to listen or use the ear, and the primacy was on listening to a play. So in Shakespeare's time, an audience member would say, I went to hear a play, not I went to see a play. And that shift has been really interesting, and we have an opportunity here at the Globe, as do every other theatre, to put the primacy back on the auditory or the listening part of audience attendance. It's important to remember that the audio describer acts as a prism through which the action of the play is understood, and that prism is influenced by the lived experience and the vocabulary of the audio describer. So it's important for us to diversify the pool of audio describers we can use to describe our plays in order that we have the widest opportunity to use the vocabulary and lived experience which reflects what's happening on stage. We've come to a point in theatre history where access can no longer be seen as an add-on or an addendum to a production. And the best way that a theatre can support very good audio description and audio description that will actually serve the requirements of the visually impaired audience is if they include it from the beginning of the production and in their content planning from the very start. There are several steps that a theatre can take to assist audio describers in producing top quality and useful audio description for the visually impaired audience. One of these things is to ensure that you keep open communication channels with your VI audience. There's no point putting on a provision if you're not actually talking to the people who use it. The next one is understanding that it's everyone's responsibility to be as accessible as possible. So whereas it's wise to have one point of contact within a theatre to be the voice of the audio describer when things need to happen, it's also crucial that everyone, so if they work in the gift shop or in the box office, right up to the chief executive and artistic director, understand what happens during an audio described performance. It's fascinating how many directors will allow an audio description to happen without actually listening into the audio description themselves. But the more they understand that it's part of the artistic output of the venue, the more they might engage with the process of creating good audio description. Access isn't one person's responsibility, it's everyone's. And it's also not an act of charity, it's simple equality and equity. It's making the world slightly fairer for everyone one step at a time, and that can only be done if society works together to make it happen.
Royal Holloway University, supported by the Arts and Humanities Research Council and Vocalise.